What's good, everybody? What's happening with it? It's Sad from Sad Talks TV, and I ain't gonna waste no time. I'm gonna go ahead and jump right into it. Y'all see the title of the video? The title of the video is State of the Union. So, currently, right now, in the U.S., we're going through a pivotal time, fam. It's got a lot of different shit going on right now with the tariffs, with the president, as far as finances, economy, motherfuckers not being able to pay for shit, all kind of different shit like that. So I want to run y'all through a couple different points that I got, different things that I want to address here. When it comes to these tariffs that we're dealing with, people have to stay focused on the fact that the point of the tariff is it's not necessarily about the trade war. It's more about, or it's not about the trade war and what the news is covering and what they're telling y'all. It's really about the fact that our president and this administration wants to bring back Made in America, that Made in America agenda, as far as making things here. That way, things that are from here are cheaper for us to buy as consumers, as well as just off of the strength. Whenever you get into it with a different country and you have, say for instance, any type of conflict that's going on, if you're not making anything here, you're not going to be able to perform well in that conflict, because you're relying on other countries essentially to give you the products that you need to be able to succeed. So ultimately, if you need steel, like I'll run it back. For instance, when we were in World War II, a lot of different ways that we were able to succeed with that was because we ended up turning in car plants and different establishments that we already had to contribute to the war. With us not making a lot of shit here, we're not able to contribute those same buildings and those same establishments to be able to turn those things for another war into products that we need for the war that we would be fighting. We wouldn't be able to make the things we need, whether it be cars, guns, technology, all kind of different things like that. If we don't have that type of infrastructure here, we're basically at risk. And so that's really what the tariffs are about. It's about putting the power back in our hands, because we are the biggest consumer economy in the world. And one thing that you learn in sales is that the customer is always right. Customer's always right. Wherever the money's being spent, whoever's spending it, that's who's right, and that's who you got to pay attention to. That's who ultimately has the power, and that's us. That's America. We buy the most stuff from all over the world. You know what I mean? So ultimately, that's what we're trying to get back to. Even though we have the consumer power, we need to have infrastructure to where when it's time for us to build something, and whenever it's time for us to do what we need to do and handle business, we have what we need, and we don't have to rely on other countries. So that's really what that's about. Plus, we've also been getting the short end of the stick when it comes to the trade that we do. We have a deficit, and we're ending up overpaying and really getting taxed by these other countries that we don't need to trade with, just because that's how it's been set up for the longest time. They just been taxing us for no reason, just because they could, just because they can, and because the people that came before this administration, really didn't care, I guess, or it was filling their pockets. They were getting paid, I guess, under the table or whatnot to, whatever. But that's not the point. The point is, we're trying to fix that problem. That's the point. And so we're trying to fix that problem, and we're trying to get it to where we're more profitable, just in general. So that's what's going on with the whole tariff shebang. Now, another thing that I want to address, another thing that needs to be talked about, is when it comes to, in today's society, when we're talking about young people and when we talk about the Gen Z, or whatever, whenever we're talking about Gen Z, we're talking about young people in today's world. What you're mostly hearing is negative things. You're not hearing a lot of positive things, but ultimately, I think that Gen Z is better positioned than any other generation to create the most change in the US and amongst the world in general, just off the strength that we have more information at our disposal than any other generation before us. We have more information, we have a better opportunity, and people are really starting to wake up to what the world looks like, what the world is, you know, what their grandparents went through, what their parents went through, how they lived their lives, how they didn't accomplish their goals. There's never, I don't think, ever been a generation really more aware of that than Gen Z is. And so that gives us an advantage because you got people from a young age saying, okay, well, what can I do to become successful? What can I do to end up being in a position where I'm not working at the same place for the rest of my life and depending on a social security that may not be around, or depending on something that, or a retirement or a pension, and they've cut majority of pensions out by now, but they're not leaving their financial freedom or financial stability up into the hands of where they work. You know what I mean? Because things happen and people lose their jobs all the time. Different situations occur. You know, a lot of people don't even have money for an emergency expense. We talking $2,000. We talking $1,000, $500. A lot of people don't have the money, if something like that was to happen, to actually be able to withstand that, you know? So when it comes to that, you know, if you don't got the money for that and you're building, you're trying to grow, you're trying to, you know, put yourself to where you're in a better position you were in, and then now all of a sudden you got an emergency expense that you didn't prepare for, that's gonna hold all that progress right in its tracks. So, and majority of Americans don't have the money for that. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I think that that's something we got to be aware of. But I think that Gen Z is better prepared and knows a little bit more than the previous generation and then their parents did at the time. I think that we're focusing too much. It's like extremes. We're focusing too much on the negative extreme and not on the positive extreme. So back to the administration. When it comes to Doge and these young kids who are helping really decipher what's going on in the government when it comes to where money's being spent and where government funds are going, these kids are like, what, anywhere from in their early 20s? When has there ever been a group of kids in their early 20s working in the government, especially a government that's out in front like that in the media and in this type of turnaround? When it comes to audit's never been done. But when it comes to something that's this big, having young people be in the front of it like that is unheard of. And so for me, that shows on the negative extreme when you see with the YNs on the news and shiesty masks and all that type of different stuff like that. You got on this extreme the young people that are in the government and that are helping Musk, you know, cut the fat and figure out what's really going on in the government. So ultimately, I think that Gen Z's positioned to do better because I was talking to a teenager not too long ago and we were talking about Tesla stock, and you know, granted what's going on now, Tesla stock has went down, but that doesn't mean it's going to stay down. I mean, Tesla is a technology company. It's not just a car company. Not only is it a car company, not only is it a technology company that's predominantly made in the USA, which is pretty ironic considering the fact that majority of the American-made companies and majority of the American-made car companies are, majority of the parts are not from America. Tesla is. Model Y is like 85% made in America. And now you have somebody who has an American-made company leading the Doge fund and the stock's plummeting because of the tariffs and everything like that. But it doesn't really matter at the end of the day because that's not what that company's in the game for. That company is a technology company, and when it comes to the upside of what that type of technology company could be, the upside is tremendous. I mean, we're talking about self-driving taxis, self-driving, we're already dealing with self-driving cars, but self-driving taxis, all just ways to make the human life easier, because that's really what AI is about. It's not about replacing humans, it's about paying for an experience that makes your life easier as a human, and people are going to pay for that. So yeah, I think that that's definitely a big deal, and I think that Gen Z is positioned to really make an impact and really make a difference. And you can't save everybody. Obviously, there's going to be the same cycle of people who get locked up, go to jail, don't do the right thing. The numbers across the board are going to be from generation to generation that not everybody can be saved, but the ones that can, I think, are going to make a huge difference. I think they're going to make a huge difference, and I think that I really think that this group of young people is going to change the world like we've never seen before. Like we've never seen before. A lot of the coming videos, I'm going to be talking about news. I'm going to be giving out game. I'm going to be talking about finance. I'm going to be talking about, different politic things and really how we can capitalize on what's going on. How can we capitalize on what's going on, and how can we make strategic financial moves to succeed based off of what's going on. That's something that we're going to make sure that is getting covered in the weeks to come. So ultimately, ultimately, I think that with where we are right now, we are a lot more divided than we've ever been. In previous generations, when a president would be elected, if your candidate didn't win, it wasn't, the end of the world. But I think that right now, we're really in a position with everything going on that where people are wilding out, fam. People are going crazy. People are doing all kind of protests. When these let's keep it real. Like these motherfuckers should be at work, dog. Like some of these people need to be at work. You out calling out of work to protest for something that probably is not going to change because you're butthurt about information that you didn't know and some things that you don't agree with. Ultimately, we got to do better when it comes to that. But I think also we got to do better when it comes to not being so divided based off of who a person voted for. Because at the end of the day, we're all Americans. Everybody lives in America, and everybody should be pro-America, because ultimately what benefits you benefits America, and vice versa. Benefits America, benefits you. So all the talk, all the different stuff that people are talking about and trying to support that's not, beneficial to that is one thing. But ultimately, people are just divided, and that's the part that I don't like about it, because we've never gotten to this point. We're so extreme now that we're not able to be objective and look at things for how they are and really take a step back and pay attention to what's really going on. We're not using discernment. We're not being smart. We're just not doing that. And some of us are, some of us aren't. But ultimately, with the general consensus, majority of people are leaning to one side or leaning to the other side. And there's no room for grace or having a difference of opinion than someone else. A lot of times people talk about diversity of, a lot of people are not talking about diversity of thought. It's like things are diverse until you have a different thought than someone else, or you have a different idea than someone else. And then that's when you get came for in the comments, or you get put in a box, or kind of like pushed to the side, when there's a lot of things that people don't know that are going on. Like if you really do research and you really look into things and you do your own research and you just don't go based off of talking points, it will change your perspective. The things that you find out, it will change your perspective. But the problem that people have is that they don't want to wake up. People don't want to have a new way of thinking that cracks the reality of the frame of life that they've been living in their whole lives. And so when it comes to finding something out new, it's hard for them, because if this thing that I found out that's new, that I realized is a real thing and it's facts, then everything else that comes with that means I got to start looking at everything different. You know, people talk about spiritual awakenings and waking up out of the matrix and, you know, being aware of what this world is nowadays. But what comes with that is understanding what the totality of everything that means. It doesn't just apply to one aspect of your life. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't apply to one aspect. It applies to many, many, many aspects. It doesn't apply to one simple thing. You know, it's like proving that this one thing is real that you were told was fake your whole life. And so therefore that makes you realize that, okay, if that's real and I believe that it's fake my whole life, then the other thing that I'm thinking that is fake ends up being real as well. You know, and I'm not going to go into conspiracy theories or anything like that, but there's just certain things that have been, people know are lies, but they don't, you know, they don't want to believe that they're lies, but they know that they're lies. So there's just so many different things, from what you're taught in school to what you believe in your fundamental life. I mean, I just, as an example, that eating 3 meals a day is what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to do that. Your ancestors did not eat like that. And a lot of times people who eat that way end up gaining weight and end up being more unhealthy than they were if they were intermittent fasting or eating 1 meal a day. That's just a small example. But if you ask anybody, they're going to tell you, no, you're supposed to eat 3 meals a day. They're going to tell you you're supposed to be eating breakfast. Breakfast is good for you. But in reality, breakfast was all about generating profit from breakfast foods. It wasn't because it's the most healthiest meal of the day. It wasn't because it gives you energy or none of that. That is propaganda that you were sold to believe, that you ended up believing, and everybody started just going with it. And that's a fact. But when you hear something like that, when you hear that, your mind rejects it, because if it's true, then if that ends up being true, then that means that a whole bunch of other things that you've heard that are also true, you have to start looking at that too. And then you go and you dive down the rabbit hole. And a lot of people don't want to dive into the rabbit hole and figure out what's really going on. But on a surface level, to kind of wrap it up, tariffs are not bad. It's about making your country stronger. It's about making America stronger. Gen Z can do some great things if they could get focused and start getting ahead of the game early, start investing early, start looking at what stocks are going to be prominent for the future. Tesla, to me, is definitely one of those stocks for sure, whether it be an AI company and all the different things that they could end up leading the industry in. There's a ton of other businesses that are around that we're not going to dive into just yet, but there's a ton of other businesses that are around that are solid that I would definitely be investing in, that where they're leading the industry in that field, but it's very hard for another company to come and take that spot. You know, when you're thinking about investing, think about things that are never going to go away. Think about things that people people can't live without, right? Like, people can't live without their phones. We know this. People don't go outside. People don't touch grass. People don't get air. People stay inside the house. People don't walk. You know what I mean? Like, getting out and walking, that alone can increase your lifespan by like 5 to 10%, depending on how many steps you're taking. That can increase your lifespan, and that is healthy for your body, as well as working out. You know, that's something that, but I think that when around 2020, when a lot of people's lives changed, I think that they never recovered from how their lives were impacted, and they never went back to living a regular life. And I think that because of that, they accepted a standard of living that was not necessarily normal to them, but it became a new normal. And so there's gonna be a group of people that do end up growing up where that new normal is their normal and they know nothing different. And I think that's kind of the generation that is gonna have a tough time. But ultimately, like I said, there's a great investment opportunity over the next 4 years. And there's a lot of opportunity to make change and do some great things. Something else we're going to talk about a little bit, not a whole lot. It's just going to be covering different relationships and just dropping some game, putting down some things I think that some of y'all will be able to pick up, when it comes to dating and in the modern world today. A lot of people got a lot of different opinions about how things should be, but I think ultimately when you look at the different situations and the different things, you want to look at what's right, you want to look at what's right and what's wrong. And if you have the conviction in your spirit, you'll be able to know pretty easily what's wrong, and be able to have a discussion about that. So that's something that we'll be able to touch on a good amount, because there's a lot of crazy foolishness going on, and there's a lot of guys out here getting tricked. There's a lot of fellas out here that ain't with the right people, but they just don't know no better. And you can't fault somebody for not knowing something that they don't know. Can't be mad at somebody who doesn't know and isn't hip to the game as far as what they don't know, because they just don't know. Simple as that. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that we're definitely going to cover, because, but I think also it's not necessarily, the game's not necessarily for those who have heard it but ignore it, or those who you can't convince. It's not about saving everybody. It's not about convincing everybody. It's about those who have it in them to figure out, and those who have it in them to become aware and understand. Kind of like in the Matrix movie, as far as all of that, it's kind of like that, where you get the option. A woman could tell you her nature, but if you're not willing to accept it, then me trying to tell you something about it is just going to be preaching to the choir, and you're just going to end up hearing it again. It's just going to be a better song that's getting sung, but ultimately we're going to try to sing the song better for you, but if you can't hear, you can't hear. So we're going to have to get old girl to come out and sign language it for you, and then hopefully you'll understand. But you may not ever get it, and you may not ever be able to pick it up. So get in the gym. You dig what I'm saying? Ultimately, you just got to walk that path and figure it out. Or you may not ever. You may stay asleep forever. I don't know. That's on you, not me. But, but I think that ultimately, fellas, we gotta listen to women when they tell us their nature. That's a big thing. When a woman tells you what her nature is, you gotta listen to her. You know what I'm saying? She's the woman, you're the man. I tell you something about being a man, and you can relate to it, or if I'm talking to a woman about being a man, then ultimately there's nothing she can say to me about being a man. I know what it's like, she don't. And she knows what it's like to be a woman, we don't. So if a woman's confirming something to you and telling you something about female nature and how women are, then you need to believe it. You don't need to be trying to convince her or do none of that. You need to just listen. Sometimes you just gotta listen, because ultimately she cooking something up in the kitchen and she trying to let you know, hey, you missing out on something, player. And it's some game that you need to pick up. You got caller ID, you miss your calling. Somebody's on that other line, my guy. So we'll definitely dive into some topics like that. It's a lot that we can cover. It's gonna be a lot that we can cover for sure. But be smooth, keep it player, and I'ma holler at y'all later. You dig?